Hello, everybody, and welcome to another session with us. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me Ayush, who recently scored a 715 with a 100th percentile on Quant. That's a Q90 with a V83 and a DI84, which translates to a 97th percentile. Ayush is here to share his journey. Ayush is here to share his learnings, all the things that helped him achieve what he did. He's here to help all the GMAT aspirants here so that they can excel in their journey. And this is exactly why he's here. So thank you so much, Ayush, for doing this. How are you?
Hi Dhruv, thank you. Thanks for asking. I am doing good. And how are you? I mean, it's long time to having conversation with you. So looking forward.
Yeah, I'm
How are
absolutely
you?
great. I'm absolutely great. Thanks for asking. Yes, you're right. It's been quite some time since we last spoke with each other, so it's great to again relive your journey over here, right? Um, Let me just see if live viewers can hear us. Guys, you can comment if you can see us. Feel free to post your comments, post your queries. For the first 45 minutes of the session, we will discuss Ayush's journey in detail. And in the last 15 minutes or so, we will take up your questions that mainly Ayush will answer to the best of his knowledge and experience basis his journey. Right. So, Ayush, let us quickly dive into it and then let us spill out as many beans as we can in the next 45 minutes so that a lot of other people can gain a lot of learnings from your journey. So, are you ready?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Absolutely. So, Ayush, when you started your journey, you were already at a Q87. Because you come from an engineering background, quant was always your strongest suit, right?
Right.
But you ended up scoring a Q90. So I'm sure there was some secret to it. So I have a very simple question, right? So, achieving a perfect Q90, 100th percentile from a Q87, it shows mastery of even the most challenging concepts. Without that, it is not really possible. What specific strategies in your final weeks helped you bridge the crucial gap?
Right, true. So, as you mentioned that I come from an engineering background and I already have a decent platform to begin with in terms of as far as quant is concerned. So, I was very strong in quant to begin with. But again, scoring a 90 quant 90 that is 100 percentile required some additional efforts and additional practices, which obviously I put in. So, without sounding too much fancy, I mean, there were no fancy stuff that I applied during my preparation. I only focused on quality as well as quantity. I mean, people say that quality over quantity, but I would mention that I preferred both quality as well as quantity because GMAT has a limited number of questions in their actual exam, but you have to prepare very thoroughly, very rigorously during your practice phase because any and every question that comes in the exam, you must have already solved a similar type of question during your practice so that you do not end up making silly mistakes or you do not end up spending a lot of time. So, which is why I focused both on quality as well as on quantity. So, uh, I practiced multiple questions of same type during my practice phase, which eventually allowed me to, create a pattern. I was able to look on my mistakes. I was able to find a pattern, and then with further refinement, with further improvements, I was able to eventually reach to a score which is Quant 90 and 100 percentile. So I would give the credit and the practice that I followed was both a combination of quality as well as quantity.
Perfect, perfect. I think you struck the right balance there.
Right.
Ayush, when you started at Q87,
Hmm.
it becomes even more difficult to actually find out the lingering gaps
Right.
because there are honestly very few, right? It's like you build a huge building, a huge tower, and then you're just supposed to find out five or three places where there is some seepage issue, right? So,
Right.
what was your strategy or your process of identifying those existing gaps and bridging those gaps to reach to a Q90.
Right. So while practice, I strictly followed the mock test and quizzes of eGMAT as well as GMAT Club. So I would take a quiz. I would push myself to sit in an environment which is as close as possible to the actual exam environment. I would put up a timer. I would restrict myself onto doing n number of questions. And once I was able to complete those questions, I would revisit those questions. I would identify what are the questions that I was able to do right. Was it a fluke, or was I able to apply the correct approach and logic? And in case of questions that either did a silly mistake or I miscalculated something, I would revise those questions multiple times until and unless all those mistakes were eliminated from my subconscious mind, and solving the question in the most correct approach became a second nature of myself. I would practice all those questions again and again in the questions which I made mistakes. So
Right.
here, like I mentioned, the scholarinium of eGMAT and the vast variety of questions available on GMAT Club, both of these came in very handy to me.
Right, right. I was going through some of your statistics where I figured out that word problems, which usually has the lengthiest
Yeah.
question, right? It is extremely intimidating for 99% of the students who are aiming to ace the GMAT. But you, who was already decent at word problems, went on to actually create a hard accuracy of 100% towards the end of your
Right.
preparation, right? If you could just share some tips or some strategies that helped you make solving word problems easier, that would be really helpful.
Right. So, like you mentioned, that the most challenging part of a word problem is that you first have to go through the paragraph or the passage that they have, or the word problem that they have given. You have to identify the certain digits, numbers, and information that is useful. In fact, they also hide the waste information that is of no use while solving the question, but they put in some traps and some waste information that eats up your time. So the first thing that I followed was to very religiously and very carefully go through the details that they have mentioned in the word problem, write down the necessary set of instructions or information that is needed to solve the problem, and then eventually solve the problem in the most correct manner. I did not apply any shortcuts to it because I was sure that if I go by the correct approach, I have enough and ample amount of time to complete the entire test. And in fact, I would like to share a fact about the actual exam. I was able to solve all the questions, all the 21 questions, within, I guess, around 25 to 26 minutes in the actual exam. So I was able to revise all the questions twice or thrice, in fact, in my actual exam. So I would like to emphasize that people look for shortcuts, people look for tricks and tips, but there are none while solving the quant questions. If you understand the theory perfectly well, and if you have practiced well enough, even if you solve the questions with the correct approach, even though it will be time taking, but you will end up attaining 100% accuracy. And as a result of it, you will not have to spend a lot of time in recalculating your answers, and you will not have to spend a lot of time in coming back to the questions and answers again. So this is one of the strategies that I followed.
Right, right. Now that you just mentioned time management and bringing down time,
Mhm.
again, I was going through some statistics on the portal where I saw that, while your accuracy was consistently on the upward trend, your timing was consistently coming down, right?
Right.
We get a lot of queries from a lot of students asking that, my accuracy is good, but whenever I'm solving under time pressure, my accuracy dips. How can I improve my time management? How can I bring down the time I take to answer questions? Now, the simplest answer to this question, Ayush, is practice.
Right.
Practice to an extent that processes become second nature. Apart from this, do you have something in specific that you believe or you remember worked specifically for you?
Well, to be honest, you have already shared the secret that there are no shortcuts or no second approaches to consistency and hard work. So,
Mhm.
uh, you have to practice every question enough that, like you mentioned, it becomes your second nature. So, what this will enable you to do is that you will end up making less mistakes. And in fact, the most of the time that is spent or wasted while solving a quant question is when you end up getting a question wrong, because you have already spent more than a minute or 2 minutes while solving a question, and then you end up getting it wrong, which is when you start to panic and things go haywire. So
Right.
if you are solving it very carefully, very judiciously, you are bound to get it correct in the first attempt. And if you are solving every question correct in the first attempt, I cannot agree that anyone on the earth can face time crunch while solving the quant questions, because I mean we have just 21 questions, and even if you end up taking 2 minutes per question, you should be good in 42 minutes with 100% accuracy and 100% attempt rate. So uh,
Right.
I agree that solving the question correct in first attempt is the right way to go.
Understood. Understood. Thank you so much for a lot of your insights on your quant journey. Right. This your quant journey, I think, is absolutely something that people should take a lot of learnings from, because when somebody's starting at a Q87, there are a lot of reasons to not be humble, to believe that you're good enough to go and score a Q90 on a good day, right? But your approach of not taking anything lightly, or approach of taking everything seriously, doing what it takes, being consistent, not becoming arrogant about your abilities, I think is a quality that many people need to learn, because I think it's an understated quality to be humble. And I think your journey in quant to achieve a Q90, I think, is the biggest example. So congratulations to you on that.
Right. And in fact, I would like to mention that I already knew that quant was my strongest suit. And but instead of getting overconfident of it, I always took it as a responsibility that, okay, so I can make mistakes while solving an RC question or a CR question, but quant is something that comes natural to me. So, I mean, I should take the leverage and leeway the strength that I have in quant, so that I compensate for any silly mistakes or any errors that I make in other two sections. So, I mean, scoring a quant 90 was always my aim, and I always, I mean, put forward a quant in comparison to other two sections, because I always knew that even if I make some mistakes in the other two sections, quant is always there to push my score up, and which is eventually what happened.
Correct. True. I think the quant score boosted your entire performance, and help
Right.
you break that 705 barrier, right? And that's how you reach the 715. But let us also understand that no movie or no journey is a super duper hit with
Hmm.
just one lead actor.
Right.
You need the supporting cast as well to do a decent job, and that is exactly what your data insights and verbal did. Let's speak about data insights. And by the way, let me also mention, data insights wasn't literally a side actor or a side
Hmm.
hero in your story. It was as good as a parallel role that quant played for you. Data insights also did that for you, because you went from a DI 77 to a massive DI 84, which is 97th percentile, right?
Right.
So this was an equally important section that help you boost your score to the 97%. And so my question to you is, whenever people speak about data insights, the most intimidating section there is MSR,
Right. And in fact,
right?
it was for me as well.
It was for you as well, right?
Hmm.
When people speak about MSR, it is not the strategies that they are, you know, unaware of. It is the understanding of how do I apply these strategies in the limited time that I have, because data insight is not like quant where it's just about accuracy. It is
Right.
about a balance of both accuracy and time management. So for MSR, what exactly was your approach?
Right. You exactly, I mean, hit the right chord that quant and MSR, and in fact DI overall is a completely different ball game in comparison to quant, because in quant you have standalone questions. So even if you ended up investing a lot of time in one particular question, you can always skip that question, mark anything, and then if time allows, then you can revisit that particular question. But in DI, you have got sets of questions, three questions, four questions in the form of MSR. And if you ended up scoring, investing a lot of time in one particular set of MSR, I mean, you have no scope for improvement or scope for coming back, because
Right.
even if you solve a particular set of MSR correctly, you are bound to spend 8 to 9 minutes, uh, even if you are solving it perfectly correctly in the first attempt. So, and if you ended up getting it wrong, you are spending around 10, 12, or even 13 minutes at a stretch, and still you are not getting any question correct. So this is a time is the biggest villain while solving data insights, and especially MSR. So uh, hitting the perfect balance between time, accuracy, and attempt is the right way to look how an individual can solve MSR and score a decent percentile in
Mm.
DI. So the strategy that I followed was, since I was good in quant, I translated those skills into data sufficiency. So I knew
Mm.
half of the questions are going to be data sufficiency, which I am already good at. So I would try to save a few seconds here and there while solving data sufficiency question. And while solving MSR, I would put in all my concentration, all my efforts into solving that particular set correctly. And I always made sure that I do not ended up, investing a lot of time in MSR sets, and
Mm.
keeping my accuracy to a 75 or 80%. Even if I get 3 questions correct out of 4, that is half the battle won for me,
Yeah.
because I can always maximize on other types of questions which are relatively easy and relatively less time consuming. So I did not always aim for 100 percentile accuracy, 100% accuracy in MSR. Even if I was touching 75 to 80%, I was good to go. So this was the strategy that I followed.
Fantastic. Really, really well explained. And now that we've spoken about MSR, the next big, intimidating section in the data insight section is table analysis.
Right.
Or maybe you can also say TPA is also one of those. But it's majorly table analysis or TPA because whenever I am analyzing a few ESRs, after MSR, the most amount of time which any other question takes is either TPA or table analysis. So what were you doing? What were your strategies to keep that time in check? Because you already had MSR, which would actually consume a lot of your time. So you had to
Right.
make sure that the other sections are solved in the most efficient manner. Any tips on that? First table analysis and then TPA.
Right. So, since I come from the engineering background, and the kind of work that I have been doing for the past 5 years involves a lot of data crunching and data manipulation. So I was already good at understanding numbers, understanding tables, collecting information, avoiding junk. So I was already good at two-part analysis and tables and data. So that really helped me. But apart from that, one thing which is time management also played a huge part over here. Like I mentioned, that I did not spend more than 7 to 8 minutes in MSR. So what this would do, this would allow me to spend an extra minute or extra 30 seconds on TPA as well as tables, questions along the lines of tables and data. So I would save those few seconds from MSR and would invest into questions which I knew that if I spend 10, 15, 30 seconds extra on a tables question or on TPA, I would be able to get them 100% correct. So this is what you have to play around with your strategy, with your strengths and weaknesses, because I knew that tables are my strengths, TPA are my strengths. So even if I spend a 10 to 15 seconds extra over here, I can be sure that I'm getting these questions correct. And even if cut down a few seconds from my MSR, I knew that I should be able to get 3 questions correct out of there. So you don't have to get, all 20 questions correct. The idea is to be in the top 2, 3, 5 percentile bracket. You don't have to solve every 20 questions correct. So you have to mix and match, play around with your strengths and weaknesses, and then identify what strategy works best for you. So, like I mentioned, the strategy that worked best for me was saving few seconds in MSR and then utilizing those extra seconds into TP and tables.
Right, right. So as I said, data insights was played an equal part in you scoring a 715 like a quant, but we
Right.
cannot ignore the contribution of the verbal section to your score because you were starting at a V79 and you improved to a V83, which is a good 4-point improvement, a very crucial one. right? So when you are moving from a V79 to a V83, right? Your RC accuracy, I was going through the portal, improved to maybe a 75% to or maybe 80% as well on hard questions. So what were those specific changes in your reading approach that led to this improvement?
Right. So, like you rightly mentioned that quant, and then since DI is very closely related to quant, these were my strong suits, quant being the strongest and followed by DI. But RC is one thing where I struggled a lot right from the starting. And in fact, even though I improved my RC, the VA score to 83, I was still not satisfied with the end results because I had put in a lot of analysis and lot of effort into it. So,
Yes.
which is why I was not overall satisfied with my score. But having said that, since I already started from a very disadvantaged position because RC was something which has always troubled me. So I was overall happy that I was able to, land up in a safe score. So the strategy that I followed was when I wrote my first attempt, when I gave my first attempt at GMAT, I thoroughly analyzed that what are the things that went wrong and went against my, against my favor while during the actual exam. So one thing that I analyzed was that CR is something which I was at around 80% or 85% accuracy. So that was something still a saving grace for me. But RC was something which I failed miserably. I think I scored 50% accuracy in RC in my first attempt. So on analyzing this data and information, it was very clear to me that RC is something that needed a major change and and it had a major room for improvement. So shut myself down. I completely started focusing on improving RC. So one thing that came in rescue for me was the playlist that are created on EGMAT. I went through all the modules that are available. I did all the medium and hard cementing, and then I started analyzing the mistakes that I was making. So if one thing that anyone can take forward and can try into their own preparation from my experiences, that analyzing the mistakes is the most important thing that one can do for themselves to improve their scores drastically. Someone being at a 500 score level, 600, 700, or 750 level, if they want to improve their score, they have to got to analyze the mistakes that they are making. So for that, I extensively used error logs. I created error logs very thoroughly. I would write down the question that I attempted. I would write down the option that incorrect option that I selected, the correct option that I eliminated, and that I would write the reasons for why I selected an incorrect question and why I eliminated a correct question. So, and then I'll very judicially, very thoroughly analyze the mistakes that I was making. I specifically wrote down in very common language, very layman language, the mistakes that I was making, so that I do not repeat the same mistakes again. So this is one thing that I thoroughly practiced during my preparation. And the second was visualization. So while reading the RC passage, one mistake that I very closely observed and monitored that I was making was I was skimming between the lines. I was skipping some of the lines, some of the keywords, and as a result of which I was marking incorrect options while attempting the question. So the trick that I used here was visualization. So while I would read the RC, I would think myself as a character of that RC or a passage. I would engross myself so much deep into the RC that I started imagining and I started living those RC passages. Either they were history or science related. I would think myself as if I am the part of that RC, and I would see everything from a first person's point of view. And as a result of which, I would construct a story in my mind, a complete mapping of everything, every event that is happening in the RC, and then I would move forward to attempt the questions. So what this enabled me to do is it enabled me to capture all the necessary information, all the necessary details, because as humans we are very much used to creating our stories, learning from our stories that happen and the events that happen around us, but we overlook things that we read or that we experience or we read from the surface. So while I was visualizing myself as part of the RC, I was capturing every basic and every detailed information. So what this allowed me to do, this allowed me to retain all those information without having to really memorize it. I would retain all those information subconsciously. And while solving the questions also, I was able to find the traps because I have effectively regained those information, those data very, very effectively. So I was able to eliminate the traps. I was able to select the correct answer. So visualization is second important trick that I would like to suggest while solving RCs.
Right, right. Fantastic. We'll discuss about the error log as well since you mentioned it. But before we do that, let's speak about your CR improvement. Your CR hard accuracy also towards the end of your preparation was 87%, which is
Right.
extremely high, right? If you can just share some strategies on the CR front as well as to what was your approach to CR questions, how are you going about reading the question, answer choice analysis that led to you, one, taking lesser time to answer correct questions correctly, and second, of course, the accuracy was always going up.
Right. So while solving CRs, I observed that the passage that they have given is fairly simple and not very complex. So the complexity in solving a CR question lies in the options that they have planted. So, like I said, that the passage is relatively easy, but the options that they have put in are very close to each other. They include a lot of traps, and just a couple of words would be here and there, and the person who is taking the test will fall into the trap which the question setter has set. So one thing that I followed here was pre-thinking. So I would read the passage. I would before moving on to the question or before reading the options, I would think of a possible answer beforehand. So what this will do, this will solidify the thought process that I have taken, and it will solidify the approach that I have taken so far. So, for example, if I read a passage, I think of a possible answer for the question, and then I will go forward and read the options. So now what I'll have to do, that I'll have to find an option which is most closest to my pre-thought answer. So now I
Hmm.
do not have to eliminate or select anything. I just have to find an option which is closest to my pre-thought answer. So half of the task was already done if I have thought a correct answer. The answer that I have thought as part of my pre-thinking is correct. Half of the battle is already won. Now
Yeah,
I just have to compare that particular pre-thought answer with the options which are available, and on the basis of that, I can eliminate the answers which are farthest from my pre-thought answer, and eventually I'll end up getting the one which is closest. So this is the approach of pre-thinking that I followed while solving the CR questions.
okay, fantastic. And because I said we'll talk about error log for verbal, both CR and RC. When you are maintaining the error log diligently, what were a few common mistakes that you were making initially that you later found a way to address comfortably? What were those major common issues initially?
Right. So inference type of questions for if I were to go through all my error logs, I would, assign 70% of the mistakes to inference types of question. So inference was one thing which really troubled me a lot. So since I was analyzing my mistakes very judiciously, I made sure that, okay, I have the culprit over here. I have identified my weakness, which is the inference based question. So what I used to do, I used to devote an extra hour every week or every day to inference based questions so that I was able to bring that on par with the other strengths and other areas. So
Correct.
like I mentioned that I was quickly able to recognize and realize that inference is one thing that is pulling my score down. I put in extra hours, but I made sure that I was also practicing other areas so that they do not take a hit. So like I mentioned that I was putting in extra hours to inference, and once they reached at par with the other areas, I think I was well prepared for it then.
Correct. Correct. Thank you for that. Let's speak about let's speak more about the test and certain important things that really have a huge impact on the overall score. Okay, starting with the section order. How important is it to have the correct section order, and what do you recommend should be one's section order to take the test and gain the maximum score that they possibly can?
Right. I think section order plays a huge role and huge impact on the overall score. So the section order that I took was starting with VA first, then DI, and then Quant. And the reasoning for that was that I was strongest in Quant. So even if I have spent a lot of time and effort while solving VA and solving DI, even if half of my energy was gone as I reached Quant, I since it was my strongest, I was able to do it even half asleep. So which is
Mm.
why I kept the Quant at the end, and I knew that 45 minutes is a long duration for me to solve Quant. I should be able to do that in 25 to 30 minutes. So even if I am tired towards the end, I should be able to solve within the given amount of time. And there should be no situation in which I would have to rush while solving the Quant, which is why I kept Quant at the last. And VA being my weakest, I wanted to take it head on and approach it when I am, 100% recharged, when I am at my full concentration level. So I kept VA at the first. And once VA was done, I took the optional break that they offer. Then I collected myself, gathered myself up, and approached DI in the second spot. And then eventually I ended up taking Quant. So this was my approach. But again, like I mentioned, that in the initial mocks that you give at your home, you can hit and trial, you can find what works best for you, because there have been multiple theories where which I see the substance in that. If there is a particular subject or a section which is your strength, you can also attempt that particular section in the first, because
Yeah.
GMAT is an adaptive test, and if you are attempting your strongest section at the first place, and you are setting yourself for a really high score, because the algorithm will think that you are a strong test taker, so it will set the standard of the test really high for you. So you can both of the approaches are fine as far as you are comfortable with it. So
Yeah.
mock tests play a very important role over here, because you can play around with the strategy, you can play around with the order in which the sections you attempt. Once you have the section finalized in initial one or two mocks, then stick to it, then stick to the strategy that you have created, because you do not want to be changing your strategy very frequently, and you do not want to find yourself without a strategy on the D-day. So having a strategy fixed in the last final, I would say 3 to 4 mock tests is the right way to go. So uh, play around, hit and trial, mix and match in the initial
Yeah.
first 2 to 3 mocks, finalize your strategy, and then stick to it to the up till the final exam. So that is the
Correct.
approach I would suggest.
Correct. You're right. You're right. There's no correct approach here.
Right.
It basically is, what suits you the most, what is yielding results for you, and you can always try these strategies in your mock phase, right? Trial and error, see what works the best for you, what are the most comfortable with, and you can of course go ahead with the final order, right? Another difficulty which most people face is about transitioning from one section to the other, right? So,
Right.
what exactly was your approach when you, for example, you finished the verbal section, now you are moving to the DI section? What were you telling yourself? What were you thinking? What was your approach? What were your strategies to transition? And how important is it to make sure that your accuracy on the initial questions of any section, okay, is pretty high, at least the initial questions?
Right. Actually, what I am going to say next is easier said than done. But you have to live in the present, and you have to take one question at a time. I mean,
True.
if you have attempted, let's say, verbal in the first slot, and you did not live up to your expectation, and you made some silly mistakes or some horrible mistakes. But now,
Mm.
whatever is gone is gone. You cannot change the past the mistakes that you have made in the past. Now,
Yeah.
whatever is left in your hand is the upcoming section. So I would, emphasize more on the fact that you have to live in the present and take one question at a time. You cannot worry about the questions that have already gone, or you cannot, be stressful about the questions that are about to come. And in fact, this also reminds me of one of the posts that I read while I was preparing myself. That people start to gauge the difficulty level of the question, or their percentile while attempting the question. So they will analyze that, okay, hey, this was the question which is of, let's say, 715 difficulty level. So they start calculating that, okay, I am at 715 difficulty or 715 level, which is a totally wrong approach, because the algorithm constantly, keeps changing its difficulty level on the basis of the area and the topic that the question is being asked from. So this is not a linear adaptive exam where the level of difficulty will linearly increase or decrease. Uh, the algorithm is so smart that it keeps changing the level of difficulty of question at every level and every question. So it is futile to, calculate how your exam is going, or how good or how bad your exam is going while sitting at the exam center. So I would suggest that focus mostly, and give your 100% while attempting each and every question. Do not worry about what has happened. Do not be stressful about what is about to come. Just take every question once at a time. And if you are following, these basic principles, basic rules, you should be in a good position at the end of the day. So it's, futile and wastage of energy and efforts to worry about whatever has happened. So just being calm really helps to boost your score. So this is something that I think you should reward yourself with.
True, very true. So Ayush, you were a working professional while you
Right.
were studying for the GMAT. You're preparing for it. The biggest challenge most working professionals face, one is, of course, how do I fit my GMAT prep in my busy schedule? Second is motivation, because sometimes the preparation stretches for good 2, 3, 4 months, right? How did you manage your schedule while you were preparing for the GMAT? What would Ayush's normal day look like while he was preparing for the GMAT?
Right. So, Dhruv, you mentioned a keyword over here, that how did I motivate myself? How did I maintain my motivation level? So, I am a strong proponent of discipline and consistency over motivation. I strongly believe that motivation, if there is an external motivator, the motivation can rise very rapidly. But again, in the coming days, it can fall very drastically. So,
Hmm.
I always believe that one has to be consistent and disciplined over 2 to 3 months to
Correct.
crack the GMAT exam, because it's the exam or a test of your aptitude, and it does not require much knowledge. It does not require any rocket science. It is the test of your aptitude, which can be built over 2 to 3 months or 4 months at max. So you do not have to be highly super motivated to reach to Mars or reach to Moon. You just have to do the basic maths, basic English, basic DI. So
Correct.
if you are consistent and you are, putting in efforts, improving, analyzing your mistakes, you should be, 99th or 100 percentile is just a result of end result of it. But
Hmm.
the major work is done while practicing. So if you're consistent, if you're putting in efforts day in and day out, you should be good at the end of the day. So uh, this is to answer your first part, that how did I maintain my motivation. I To be
Hmm.
honest, I was not motivated enough. I just was disciplined enough to put in those extra efforts, extra hours after completing my office work. I was disciplined enough to do that day in and day out, and at the end of the day, I achieved the result that I was aiming for. And to come to your, to answer your second question, I am a working professional and I had my office 5 days a week, and which is 11 to 8. And in fact, since my organization is located in US and I am working remotely, I used to have my office calls later in the night, which usually
Okay.
went around till 11th and 12. Uh, 11 and 12 p.m. So there was no chance for me to study during the night. So one thing that strict I struck myself to was getting up early and studying in the morning when there was no one to disturb me. I did not have any pressure of the office work. I was completely stress free. So I would get up early in the morning around 4:30 or 5, and then I would freshen up, study for around 4 to 5 hours in a stretch every day, up to 9, 9:30, 10. And then I would, prepare myself for my office work, and then I'll continue with my office work. So, studying early in the morning allowed me to study at a stretch where no one was disturbing me, no sounds of traffic, no messages or no emails from the office. So, which is again why I preferred studying in the morning. But it is also, flexible according to per individual.
Yeah.
If you have enough time to study during the night and you are more comfortable studying during night, that is perfect with you. You can follow whatever suits best you. But as far as I am concerned, I am a morning person, so I preferred getting up early and studying in the morning.
All right. I think I've asked you most questions that a lot of GMAT aspirants would have in their mind. In fact, I was just going through the comment section. A few people did ask about the section order, so we already discussed that already, right? Even before the question answer session began with the audience, right? People were asking about the MSR strategies also. I think you mentioned about that as well. So, but now let us take a few more questions that people have posted here, right? So that you can give them your insights, and I think they'll really look forward to hearing from you, right? So, uh, the first question, which I think is going to be easy to transition from what we were discussing now to what is going to happen, is from Thomas, who says, with this GMAT score, to which schools will you be applying to?
Right, Thomas, that's a very tricky and good question because I am an Indian engineer male, which is highly overrepresentative. So the schools and colleges that I am currently applying to, I am currently in the process of preparing my applications and applying to various business schools around the world in round two. So the colleges that I am currently targeting are Indian School of Business. So since I want to stay either inside India or closer to India. So ISB is one school that I am currently targeting. The second school that I am targeting is National University of Singapore, which is NUS, and the third one is NTU, that is Nanyang Technological University, again in Singapore. So these are the three colleges that I am targeting, while the fourth one being HCC Paris. So since again my options are limited because I do not want to switch to or shift to US, so I am restricting my options closer to India. So India, Singapore, and Europe are three options that I currently have. So those are the colleges which I am currently targeting.
All right. Thank you for that, Ayush. Thank you for the question, Thomas. The next question, Ayush, is actually for me from Arpit Falcon. He's asking me, Dhruv, the scores you mentioned, are they before Ayush even started preparing? So yeah, look, he did score a 715, but when I say he went from a Q87 to a Q90, so Q87 was, of course, from his first attempt, right? When he was self prepping. Is that right, Ayush?
Right, right. To set the contract right for Arpit, I started from the first attempt that I took for GMAT was where I scored 675, and my sectionals were 88 in quant, 84 in DI, and 79 in verbal. So I was not happy with my score, so I got in touch with Dhruv. We put in a lot of efforts. We improvised our strategy, and in my second attempt, I ended up scoring 715 with 90 in quant, 84 in DI, and 83 in verbal.
Correct. So I think Arpit
So
has his,
over the course of 1 month preparing with EGMAT and Dhruv, we were able to improve my score by 40%, 40
yeah,
points.
true. True. That was within a month. Arpit has another question. He's asking, is this a pre-recorded video? No, it is not, Arpit. Look, can you see me waving? There's not a
Hey Arpit,
pre-recorded
how are
video.
you?
Okay. Then Mohit is asking about MSR. So he says, for MSR questions, if we put it for review, will I be able to attempt all MSR questions at last, or only single question will be moved to review?
Well, so Manit, this can be a really good strategy if you are comfortable with other types of questions and are slightly at a weaker position in respect to MSR. What you can do is you can quickly scan the details that I mentioned in MSR. You can see if there is any easy or low hanging fruit in terms of questions which are available in the MSR set. if you are able to solve one or two questions, then next what you can do is you can bookmark two of the questions, finish all the remaining questions which you are strong at, and if in case you have some time left towards the end, you can always revisit three questions that can be bookmarked. So if you already have solved one or two questions in the while you are solving the questions in the first round, you can bookmark remaining two questions and then you can revisit those two questions. So what this will do, this will allow you to save few extra minutes because you are not putting in your 100% while solving the MSR in first round. You can simply bookmark them, solve remaining questions, and then revisit if time allows.
Okay. Thank you so much, Manit, for asking this question. A lot of other people would have also had this question in why are you? Ayush has answered this question for everyone. Okay, the next question is, hello, how long do you usually sleep? Since you work from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., I'm kind of curious what your schedule looks like outside of office hours.
Right. So I would usually sleep for 5 to 6 hours during the night, and I would, take out 1 hour from my office during lunch. I would take a quick nap during, noon. So in total, I would eventually end up getting 6 to 7 hours of sleep, 5:30 hours towards the night, and 1 hour in the, during the day. So this is what used to happen during weekdays, but I would make sure that the sleep that I'm sacrificing over the weekdays, I would make up for it during the weekends. So during weekends, I would sleep for 11 to 12 hours, so that the quota of sleep, or the amount of sleep that is required over the week, I was fulfilling it while sleeping at stretched hours during the weekends.
Right, right. So now I think everyone knows what schedule Ayush had. The next question is from,
Also, Dhruv,
yeah,
just to add a quick point to that,
please.
GMAT preparation requires only 2 to 3 months. So if the aim that you are targeting, if you are targeting for a top B school or a 99th or 100th percentile, I think that is enough to keep you, awake during nights. That is enough to get you up without setting up alarm. So one thing that I would also like to mention, that I used to set up an alarm for 5:30 or 6, but I ended up getting up before the alarm rang because I was so determined in my mind that I had to achieve this particular target. So in fact, I would also have dreams related to solving questions from GMAT. So during in my dreams also, I was solving questions. So uh, like I mentioned, that this is a very short journey. 2 to 3 months is something that you are looking at. So even if you are compromising on your sleep for half an hour or an hour every day, I think the sacrifice is worth it at the end of the day.
Correct, correct. That's true. So the next question is from Stephanie. She's asking, what resources do you suggest if you can't afford the EGMAT license? EGMAT is affordable, Stephanie, but nevertheless. Yes, Ayush.
Right. So I took the 2 month subscription of EGMET, which is I think around $200 if I remember correctly. So that is very much affordable. And in fact, there are a multiple free resources available on GMAT Club. You have ample amount of questions from every topic, every category available on GMAT Club. So uh, it only boils down to your dedication, that if you are dedicated enough to put in the extra efforts, there are multiple free resources available on the internet, and GMAT Club being the best, resource that is available. So you can filter out the questions on the basis of topic. So in fact, since you have asked this, I would also like to mention that since I have already exhausted all the material that was available on eGMAT Club, and I still had a couple of days left for my actual GMAT exam, I then visited to GMAT Club. I would filter out MSR questions from highest difficulty to lowest difficulty, and from there I would solve those questions which are available on GMAT Club. So there is no dearth of questions that are available. So you just have to be dedicated enough, and I think you should be able to crack it with the free resources that are available as well.
All right, so that's your answer, Stephanie. Do we have any more questions? Okay, so there's a question from Greatness. How many hours a day would you recommend studying quant to go from scoring a 73 to a 90 or close to a 90?
Right. Like I mentioned, that there is no, I mean, a hard and fast rule that can be applied to everyone, each and everyone. So if quant is your weakness and rest of the two sections are still at a better accuracy and at a better level, I would suggest that if you are able to devote 4 hours a day, I would suggest that you devote around 1.5 hour to 2 hours to quant, and the remaining 2 hours equally divided into the remaining two sections. And this is applicable for anyone, each and everyone who are either weaker at verbal or weaker at DI. What they can do is, if they are able to devote 4 hours in a day, they can split those 4 hours into two halves. One is uh, one half of 2 hours which can be devoted to their weakest section, and the remaining 1 hour each to their stronger section. So over the course of 2 to 3 months, you will realize that you are improving and you are growing from quant 73, like you mentioned, to quant 90 or closer to quant 90. But again, the shining up, or the north star that really lies over here is that you need to learn from your mistakes. So even if you put in 1,000 hours while preparing for a particular subject, but you ended up making same mistakes again and again, I mean, that is of no use. Those 1,000 hours are of no use. So you got to review your mistakes, you got to learn from your mistakes, and you have to make sure that you do not repeat the same mistakes again. It is fine that you are making a new mistake every time, but you have to promise yourself and you have to make sure that you are not repeating the same mistake again. So to I mean, to fulfill that and to achieve that particular uh, the promise that I made to myself to not to repeat the same mistake again, I had, like I mentioned, I prepared an error log, and while attempting every mock, I would, I mean, devote 2 hours before every mock. I would go through all the error logs that I have prepared, and I would make sure that I do not repeat those same mistakes in the next test that I am going to take. So this is how you can improve from Q73 to Q90.
Right. Now that you just mentioned about the error log, Ayush, Arpit has asked another question. He says, "Can you please, share more about your error log? How did it look? Where did you maintain it? Online, notebook?"
Right. So I maintained it online on the Excel sheets that are available. So I is there a way to present, if I can present my screen? I think that would be really helpful. I can maybe walk
Mm,
through the error logs that I have
there
created. That
should
will
be a
be
share button.
right. Let me know if my screen is visible. I think I have found something.
We
Let
can't
me
see
know
your
if it
screen.
is visible. Is it visible?
Yes, wait.
Just a second.
No.
Let me just open
There's
it
a
up.
present button. Can you see that?
Yeah, just a second. Let me just open it up.
Sure.
In the meantime, you guys can post other questions. I'll be happy to take them also.
All right. So the next question is from Pushpa. So Pushpa is
Right.
asking what is the timing of your exam and how it played a big part. Probably asking you about what time did you take the test and what role did that play? How impactful was that? And what is the revision strategy for all the three sections?
Right. Dhruv, let me know if my screen is visible. I think
It
I
is
have.
visible now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, as you can see that I have prepared an error log on Google Sheets that are available. So here I had my daily target. I would denote, I have designated four different sections over here for RC, CR, content, DI. And here, as you can see that I would make sure that I'm practicing RC every day. And since quant and DI were my stronger parts, I was able to skip them on a given day. But I made sure that I was taking cementing quizzes. I was practicing previous incorrect questions, easy, medium, and hard quizzes very regularly. So this is the daily target that I was achieving, and I was marking every day. I was striking off every day only if I was able to achieve the targets that I have planned for them in advance. Similarly, if I head over to the next sheet, this is the CR error log. Here you can see I have mentioned the question type, which is a weakening type question. Here I have mentioned the, let me just also quickly zoom it so that it's clearly visible. Here I have mentioned the question. Here I have mentioned the options. So this is the option. B option is the one which I marked and which was eventually incorrect. This is the correct option which I eliminated. Here I have mentioned the difficulty level, the time I have taken, and here I have mentioned the reasons why did I eliminate the correct choice. So I have very briefly mentioned the reasons why I had eliminated the correct choice. Here I have written the reasons why did I select an incorrect choice, and over here I mean uh, put down my thoughts, the summary of it, that what are the conceptual gaps or what are the corrective actions that I am supposed to take. So this is how I prepared an error log for CR. So here, as you can see, I have created the same template and same error log for each and every question that I went through. Similarly, if I open for RC, here again I have the same kind of error logs. What did I eliminate? Why did I eliminate the correct choice? Why did I select the incorrect choice? Similarly, if I head over to DI also, I was maintaining an error log that why did I falter while selecting this particular question? What will I mean take forward from my learnings over here? Similarly, there were other error logs for the official mocks, my attempt one. In fact, I mentioned briefly during my introduction that I was able to score an 86% in quant while during my first attempt. So I have briefly analyzed it. I have written that I must have made some silly mistakes because the questions were very much doable for me. I ended up making 3 mistakes in my first attempt, which I eventually rectified and corrected in my second attempt. Similarly, for DI also, I listed over here that I can improve my speed a little bit because I had to rush in the second half, and that I ended up making 3 wrong questions, marking 3 wrong questions in the second half. So since MSR always comes in the first half of the question paper in DI, so I ended up investing a lot of time in MSR, which is why I had to rush towards the end. Similarly, as you can see over here, that the overall accuracy in my RC was 53% only, while for CR it was 80%. So CR was still okayish. I was confident while marking the options, but I could also identify the traps that were hidden in the question. But over here also, I have identified the same mistake, that RC is something which I always had to improve upon. So this is the level of analysis that you have to do. This is the level of error logs that you have to maintain in order to improve from any level to a 99th or a 100th percentile. So if you are putting these much efforts, I can guarantee you that your scores will drastically improve and you will see the improvement yourself. So yeah, this is all about error logs. Do let me know in case of any questions, any queries, or else I can stop sharing my screen.
Yes, you can stop sharing your screen. We'll take one last question because the session is coming to an end, right? So we've already discussed about WP and the strategies there, right? But let's take one last question. This one is from Pushpa. So Pushpa is asking, what is the timing of your test, of your exam, and how it played a big part? What is the revision strategy for all the 3 sections?
Right, Pushpa. So to answer your first question, the timing of my exam was 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. So I mean strategically chose a noon slot because first I was this examination center was too far away from my place, from the place where I was living. So I strategically chose that particular slot so that I can travel to the exam center, and I should not be in a hurry while reaching to the exam center. And I also did not want to keep it towards the evening because because during an examination, I'm sure you are sleep deprived and you are not able to concentrate on your daily task. You always keep on thinking about your exam. So if the exam is set towards the evening, you end up wasting a lot of your energy while thinking about the exam before even attempting the exam. So I wanted to keep it as early as possible, but also wanted to have some extra gap so that I can reach to the exam center well within time, and I should not be in a rush to reach the exam center. Dhruv,
All
what were the
right.
other questions that Pushpa asked? I think the question
The
disappeared
other
from my screen.
question that Pushpa has asked, yeah, the revision strategies for all the three sections. Last question for the day.
Right. So, like I mentioned, that I had always been maintaining error log throughout my preparation. So the revision strategy that I followed was I used to revise all my error logs once before attempting any mock. And in fact, I followed the same strategy while attempting the actual exam as well. So I revised all the error logs that I have prepared before the exam, and then I went for the examination center.
Right. So that answers Arpit's question also, because that is exactly what he had asked. How often would you revise your error log? So two questions answered, right, by Ayush in one go. So with that, thank you so much, Ayush, for giving us your time, for being so diligent in sharing your insights and trying to be as helpful to all these GMAT aspirants over here. You put up so many questions and you answered all of them so dedicatedly, sharing your error log and answering all the questions. So thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for everybody who joined in for Ayush's session. I'm sure you learned a lot out of his journey, and all of us hope that you ace your GMAT journey as well, like Ayush did. And hopefully, we get to interview you over here someday, and you are on this side of the frame. So, thank you so much, everybody. Good night. Good night, Ayush. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dhruv. Good night.